This episode of Taproom Travelers is brought to you by Lazy Monk Brewery.
Jim and I'm the general manager and co-owner of Sand Creek Brewing Company. I met my original partner, Corey Schrader, while I was going to school at UW Eau Claire. Back in the college days, there was beer everywhere and that kind of stuff. None of it was really good. And he had this really cool thing about, hey, I can make beer. And I was like, what's this? This is kind of neat. So he got me kind of started on how to homebrew and that kind of deal. And at the same time, he always had an idea to start his own brewery up on the farm. And that was a little 476 square foot dairy shed up there. Sand Creek Brewing Company name came from the name of the creek. It's a sandy creek that ran through the farm. But anyway, started out showing us how to homebrew, that there's something a little bit better than a mass-produced beer. It didn't work out in the long run. Well, at that same time when I was going to walk out of the business, we got the phone call from Todd. And that's when his current bosses, the Hellman boys, were going to sell the Pioneer Brewing Company. And so it was about a week before Thanksgiving in 2003, over a beer and a handshake, that his bosses decided to sell the business to Todd and myself.
Well, I'm Todd Krieger. I'm brewmaster at Sand Creek Brewing, co-owner. Been here since day one. Employee number one, still got the top card. I started out as a home brewer. I was really successful at State Fair, things like that, a bunch of other competitions, getting really good awards in those days. I went to Chicago, did Siebel's short course back in, 18, 20 years ago. By October, I had already sealed this job down and decided to move across the state and start up here. First beer on the market was Pioneer Lager.
Pioneer Brewing Company did indeed buy Wisconsin Brewing Company. When they had their two floods in consecutive years, the Hellmans purchased the brands, and then when we purchased the Pioneer brands, Todd and I made a decision to let the Wisconsin brands, stay with the Pioneer boys, and we decided to just take the Pioneer brands, Sand Creek brands, and grew those. Yeah, it's a tale of about 4 breweries by the time you get done figuring everything else out with it. Yes, indeed. What makes this place historically significant, it's the site of the first large-scale Western Wisconsin brewery. This is before the Heilman operation was up and going, before Langenkugel's, before Point was being brewed. Beer was being brewed on-site here by the Oder family. They ran the business right up until Prohibition, and then that pretty much shut everything down.
The cellar space that we're in, this was built in 1856. This was dug out by hand, and the walls are layered in horsehair, cork, and plaster. There's about 6 inches of cork on these walls, and then there's upwards of 48 inches of rock down here.
After Prohibition, had a lot of different things going on with it. They made landmine parts during the Vietnam War. They had a creamery in here. They processed chickens and turkeys.
Over the years, for this being a turkey processor, this is where they stored the eggs, and they would freeze their turkeys and keep them down in here.
Soft drink factory, Coca-Cola had a small bottling works. A lot of different little things like that. Typically storage, stuff you could put into a big old building, right up until 97 when the Hellmans bought the building and started the Pioneer Brewing Company. So there's a lot of different things. If on the outside of the building, you can see a lot of still the old, the signs still painted on the side of it, which makes it kind of neat.
But being a brewery built in the 1800s, everything is gravity fed. Malt is on the 3rd floor, brewing is on the middle, fermentation's halfway down. Our finished product is all the way down in the basement. I can turn on hot water in the brew house and it'll gravity feed all the way through the building. Our water right here on site is locally sourced. It's sourced like about 10 feet from my office. But with our own well water, there was a reason why they built a brewery here. They built a brewery here because the water was available. Having a good, consistent supply of water is really, really critical to our business.
Well, things do go bump in the night. Lights will turn on, doors will open. Odd things do happen on here. Pumps will turn on and off. Sometimes you'll see something that may or may not be there. You leave a beer on the counter and it tends to keep the spirits happy. It goes back to the original story of the Oder family. Ulrich Oder, the little gnomey-looking fellow in the center. His wife Anna is to his left, 17 years his junior. They had 4 sons, 4 daughters. Well, it's kind of a bummer for the male gene pool, as it were. Frank Oder Bowles is there on the far left. Well, on this point, one of his buddies had the very first motorized boat. Now you got to remember, this is 1911. Him, Frank, and 8 of his friends went on said boat, went upstream on the Black River, and the steering mechanism jammed on the boat. Frank wasn't quite so lucky. Over the dam he went. The next one was brother Edward. Nothing nearly as dramatic as his elder sibling, died of consumption, tuberculosis. But then we get to talk to Charlie. About 1889 or so, he was working on mashing in some beer into the mash tun. Now back in the day, everything was open fermentation, open brew kettles, and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have the enclosed stainless steel vessels that are so prevalent in the craft brewing industry now. But unfortunately, Charlie did a slip and fall into the drink, 170-degree sugar water. The valiant lad, I believe is the quote from the newspaper, pulled himself up, but he passed away from the very next day. Which gets us to Brother George. On the far right, he could not escape the dark hand of fate as well. He died in a mysterious fire in his sister Mary's house, which is just down the hill from the brewery here. Anna and the 4 daughters did run the business a couple of years prior to Prohibition kicking in. Society back then, a very male-dominated brewing business, and hey ladies, you did pretty good. You ran against some of the biggest beer barons around, with Gottlieb Heilemann and Jacob Leinenkugel. The Oder Bowles family was doing a pretty good job.
We're going to make a product that's going to be good. We're going to try to be unique. We're going to try to bring some different things out there, but we still have to be able to market it. We still have to be able to push it out and get it into the market. We don't have the conveniences of Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Madison, Chicago. They're not going to walk in our door every night at 5 o'clock and have their their normal Friday night drinking. We've got to get people to come here, or we have to be able to package it and get it into their hands. Sure, anybody can make a one-hit wonder, but you got to be able to keep repeating that product over and over again.
You know, we have a pretty thriving contract business as well, and that beer will wind up who knows where, Missouri, Kentucky. You know, come in, show up, and I've got an idea, and it'll be something that could be even on a cocktail napkin or just a spreadsheet from a home brewing deal. And my partner Todd's a skilled guy, a skilled brewer, and he'll put it together to figure out how to go from a 5-gallon pail to a 20-barrel batch, and away we go from there.
With the ingredients we brew around here with various customers and our own, I've done everything from fruit juice to nuts and berries and flowers and things like that people will go, you're not supposed to put that in the beer. I know. I'm not paying the bill. He wants it in his beer and he thinks he can market it. I'm going to show him how it can be put into the beer cleanly, safely. It's going to be able to hold up for a long time. As we were growing, we picked up some new customers. Fall City Brewing out of Louisville, Kentucky. The guys at Fulton, the guys at Fargo, those guys there, they really wanted more and more beer. They were growing their markets. They had no operation to produce their beer. So we said, we don't have the cash on hand to buy fermenters. Love to buy some fermenters, but can't do it. I said, all right, here's the deal. You buy us the fermenters, we'll take you $1 a case off, and we get that $1 a case till we pay these fermenters off. We can get them turned quickly, they're clean, they work. Being a machinist, I stumble into it and I can physically put my hand on it and go, okay, yeah, we're this. So when it comes to fixing things around this place, I've got the knowledge and I don't have to call in somebody from Chicago or Minneapolis to come down and fix my piece of equipment. When the bottling line's going down, everybody turns to me, puts their hands in their pockets and goes, what are you gonna do? I said, get me this, this, and this. I'm like a screaming doctor down there, you know? The bottling line that we have a 40 valve Meyer. That 40 valve can have speeds up to 500 bottles a minute without batting an eye. It was at Green Mountain Beverage out in Vermont. They're the guys that do woodchuck and woodpecker ciders. They ran that thing 5 days a week, 24 hours a day. So our beer storage for our keg product, our hop storage, and our bright tanks are all kind of jammed in the same neighborhood. We use every square inch of this building. After we tear out the old cooler door, we slid these tanks into our room. There's 4 tanks sitting in here behind me. Our small tank, it's about a 10-barrel tank, made originally for, I think, Cherryland Brewing. It doesn't have great cooling capabilities, but it works well into our cellar. Most of those other tanks have actually moved down to Mobcraft. So, us old guys in the world of brewing, we follow each other's equipment around. We know who's got what and where it came from, and it's not just brand new equipment. You see new equipment, new shiny tanks, they're great, but there's no history behind it. With the clientele that we've grown over the years with, it gives us the experience of trying out different styles and different flavors, and I can pick our way through these different beers and try to figure out what parts I like about these styles and these beers. From the old farm at Sand Creek, we brought down the Golden Ale and the English Ale. The Golden Ale didn't have enough feet. We've morphed that into other beers, and that kind of helped us build the One Planet. That one went well for a while. It sold predominantly in our own market. Well, that's not enough people. So we turned it into Woody's Easy Ale. It's not just a label change, it's a complete top to bottom change. Now, we were asked by some of the local sportsmen's clubs that they're trying to bring elk back into Jackson County. They said, can you do something for us? Can you give us donations? Can you help us? I said, great, we can do it. So what we did was we take $1 a case out of every batch of Bugler that we make. So we made Bugler Brown. Bugler Brown, light American brown ale, lightly hopped, nice, easy drinking, light brown ale. We wanted to do, Frank's Wild Ride. Well, Frank was the eldest son of the family. He went over the dam here in town and died. Well, it was kind of an inside joke for us. Most people didn't quite realize what we were really pointing at. So we went with the Wild Ride. It's built really hop forward. Our lemonade line, it's low in pH, full of antioxidants, natural fruit juices. I call it a health drink, but I don't know. Throw it on the rocks, add some vodka to it, then it's a little healthier, I guess. Our hard lemonade sells the best for the number of cases going out the door. That's our bread and butter. That's the one that pushes a lot of product out the door. The one that's actually moving in our beer side, Oscar's Chocolate Oatmeal Stout. Big Black Delicious, that's the one that drives the rest of the bus. Oscar's started out as a homebrew recipe from a couple of the owners of Buffalo Wild Wings down in Milwaukee and Madison Market. And he came to us and said, really want to do this oatmeal stout I've got. And it was about a 10 or 12%. It had cocoa powder, it had nuts, it had everything in it. And I said, great beer, I could drink one of them, but you want something that your customers are going to come in and drink 2, 3, 4 beers of it. I said, we're going to take the flavor profile you have, we're going to build it with malt, and we're going to give it back to you. And we came up with a recipe that we really, really liked, handed it to those guys, and the restaurants that those guys are still owning are still carrying our product because they really like that flavor profile. If I'm drinking a beer around the brewery, generally it's the stout because I can drink that all day long. We use our tap room, kind of a place to really show a different line of beers that we've had over the years. We bring some new stuff through there. We'll produce a weird product, pull some of that out. We'll push it here through the tap room, try to get people to get the word out on the internet and say, here, we're going to do this beer. It's going to be limited release. You're going to find it in a few different taverns around the state, and you're going to find it at the tap room. Come on down anytime you're looking at it. Sand Creek is open weekends, Fridays.
Love to have you come in and have a pint with us in our tap room.
Hi! If you like what we do here, you can click up above where we have t-shirts and other merchandise for sale. You can also show your support by subscribing or liking the video. You can also click down there where we have our next episode. I'm going to shut up right now for a word from my sponsors.
Lazy Monk Brewing is home to a European-style beer hall complete with a beer garden overlooking the Chippewa River. Visit downtown Eau Claire and see it for yourself. Lazy Monk, a family brewery.